You look terrible. I want you to eat. I want you to rest well, and a month from now, this Hollywood big shot's gonna give you what you want.
It's too late. They start shooting in a week.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes, and obviously, Perch and I have been covering kind of the gamut of everything that's been happening with the comic book industry ever since the COVID-19 pandemic shutdown started. There was a lot of speculation. How many shops are we going to lose? Are we going to lose some publishers? Is Diamond going to fall? Obviously, they shut down, but things have come back up. We got a couple of new distributors now. Perch, there's this weird rumor that I'm hearing that basically all these comic shops have been propped up by the PPP, which is part of the government initiative kind of to get money into the economy. Basically, it's a payroll initiative where if you receive this money, you have to go and pay people. Like when that money dries up, does that mean all the comic shops are going to go under?
It may. I think the PPP loans and the money kind of that goes in there, it was designed to be, or kind of, I guess the better way to say it, it was predicated on the idea that things would be improving in the summer and that things would start to move. That it was a short-term loan that was a way to kind of bridge. And with the economic situation not necessarily improving and with things kind of dragging out, the kind of runway that a lot of these companies had to build up more revenue may not exactly exist. And so, here we are. So it is, there's a bunch of companies in a very dangerous spot right now, I would say, and across the whole country, not just comics, but certainly with comics.
This is one of those narratives. A lot of times when I'll hear, so-and-so is going to go under because of this or whatever, I'll kind of go and research and have a good idea. But this one, with this question, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm completely flying blind because the way that the loan structures work, they release the names of the companies that received more than, I believe it's $150,000 via these payroll loans.
Right.
Virtually every comic book store that would have received these would be under $150,000. So we don't really know the extent of the amount of comic book retailers that needed this money to kind of prop them up during this shutdown. I imagine it's a lot. The ones that I've talked to, it sounds like a lot of them received this, but it's a really huge unknown.
It is, and like I said, it's hard to pin down how many shops actually received this loan and kind of where it sat. I would be surprised if, I would guess that at least 60% of the shops are probably under the size that it would really have an impact for. So again, it's hard to say, but with this loan in general, it's good. And to keep in mind, there was this loan. There was also the fundraiser that went on for comics that some people received something. It's hard to say what, but overall with the shops and the publishers, quite a bit of money was handed out to comics. I think maybe the scariest thing in all this is just it was, especially with like the list of publishers, it was very universal who got this. Like everybody got this loan, and everybody's facing the end of that runway now.
Yes, obviously, we know that I believe there was 2 rounds of PPP loans. We know there's another round of stimulus coming from the U.S. government, and that's another unknown. We know that people have been receiving checks from the government to prop up the economy while this has all happened, and a lot of that stuff is set to be completed with. No more money will be coming through, even for people that are unemployed during this time. And I do believe that some of those receiving that have had extra money. They didn't lose their jobs, they weren't under on their house and stuff like that. Sure. And they have used that discretionary money to go and maybe go buy some back issues and stuff like that. I just had Paley on the channel not too long ago, and he was kind of explaining the skyrocketing prices for key comic issues in the secondary market, because there's a huge demand for it now because people are using that money, or some money, I'm assuming it's that money, to go out there and get a lot of these key issues that they've been having their eye on. And we know that money is going to dry up too. So I imagine that's another factor we have to think about.
Yeah, it's absolutely. And I think that the unknowns of how long this was going to last, where it was going to all come in. That's what's driving people. So for some who took the loans and maybe used it to invest in their own infrastructure, or like I said, go out and get back issues and other things, they might have been counting on the fact that, come July or August, they'd be in stabler financial footing. And so they may now be in a position where they should have maybe conserved that money a little bit more. There's also, and this more applies to the larger loans. I don't know if the smaller loans have the same restrictions, but there was, there was some requirements around what you're supposed to do with employees and kind of how you're supposed to retain them, and that you're not supposed to lay off people during this period where you receive the loan.
Like 80% had to be paid towards payroll.
Yeah,
for it to become like a tax or an interest-free or a forgivable loan, I believe.
That's a forgivable loan, and in addition to that, I think there was a timing of sometime around end of July, I believe, where you couldn't lay people off, couldn't take the money and then reduce headcount anyway. Lots of people were getting around that by noting that independent contractors and others are not layoffs; they're just not renewal of contracts. So there was a lot of kind of manipulation with his money. I think the kind of the headline or the summary in all this just is that this money is probably running out. It was a short-term bridge. Another bridge is needed. It's unlikely that the same scope of bridge is going to be provided. It's unlikely that there's going to be another BINC or these kinds of charities that are going to come up. So it's questionable kind of what happens. I was on your show. We talked about this before, that this is going to be the year where we could see anywhere from 15 to 20% of comic shops go out. And I think those numbers are going to prove to be very accurate.
Obviously, we have seen some comic shops kind of call it quits. Even before kind of the shutdown happened, they kind of saw the writing on the wall. We saw some comic shops not really reopen. We also saw comic shops be affected by the recent protests and unrest that were going around nationwide. I've seen comic shops that have decided to go to a full online model, kind of abandon brick and mortar, go to like a mailing distribution kind of model. Even my comic shop, the one in Manila, it's got, I believe, 3 or 4 locations. They're closing down one of their physical locations, and they're moving more emphasis on their online mail order subscription service that they're doing. So people are adapting to it, but I'm with you, man. I think the worst is still to come, because eventually the bottom's going to drop out on these PPP loans. The bills kind of come due, and there's just another factor is there's not a lot of new comics coming up right now. And, besides DC, who's really making people come back to comic shops to buy new comics? It feels like everyone's kind of got their eye on old comics right now.
Yeah, I think there is a healthy trade there, and I think it's just a very, very slow start. What we don't yet know in all of this, and it's a key factor for comic shops, is did the break of comics and not being able to shop, did that break people of their habit? We don't know. There's no doubt it will break some, but is that number 5%, 50%? And we don't have any idea. I think the question that when I talk to a lot of retailers, what's on their mind is how many people are going to decide this was good, to use an industry term, a good jumping off point. And it's just, they've been kind of maybe uneasy with comics and the amount of spend and kind of where their money was going. Now the belts have to be tightened. Now that this all has to be done, maybe now's a good time to stop collecting. And that's the fear that's on a lot of people's minds. So when you go back and you look at these PPP loans running out, they could be kind of running out at a time when you're trying to reopen, and maybe you need that extra capital to kind of push yourself back in. Maybe you need to buy supplies or just kind of change your business model around, but you're facing the prospect of some unknown amount of your customers just being done. And that's the worry. That's what has a lot of people on edge right now.
Well, I can tell you right now, I absolutely noticed, as a retired person in the Philippines who has to order all of his comics by mail, and when everything shut down, I absolutely noticed how much money I was spending, because I had all this extra money like sitting in my pocket. I was like, wow, I didn't realize exactly how much, like, this is making a big difference. And it ended up we needed the money, so it ended up working out for us. So I could see a lot of people, if you got some uncertainty about your job prospects, maybe you did lose your job and you haven't found found that next venture for you quite yet. Now might be a time to kind of pull back from the comic book hobby and take a different look at things, and kind of wait and see,
Yeah, no, I mean, when there's been recessions like in 2008, kind of that era, the people jumping off comics, we didn't feel it until about 6 to 9 months after the recession really took hold. And I think that we're going to see a similar thing here. You're not going to necessarily notice they're gone until months later when they are gone. And if at that same point you're facing kind of the need for another loan or any of these things, it's going to be an issue. And if you look at some of the publishers on the other end that took loans, I mean, you had Diamond comic distributors taking a $5 to $10 million loan. You had Dark Horse 2 to 5. You had IDW 1 to 2. I mean, you had some pretty big loans given out to companies. I mean, even Image took a $350 million loan, and
350 million,
350,000 to 1 million.
Okay.
Sorry, 350,000 to $1 million loan. These are big dollars going into the publishers as well. And keep in mind that simultaneously they were going ahead and shedding and stopping work for independent contractors, which they were allowed to do. So, how's that money going up? The San Diego Comic Convention took a $1 to $2 million loan. So there's a lot of money that went out there to kind of bridge the gap, but there's not necessarily a clear picture of what the world's going to look like in August, September. And that's, it's not, I don't want to be the doomsayer of the worst is yet to come, but definitely there's some worrying things yet to come. And we definitely are looking at the future with some apprehension.
Sometimes I get some feedback from viewers and they think that you and I talk about these things almost like we don't have any heart or we don't have any feeling towards these things that are happening. And maybe we talk about them in too general an aspect. But I know, you were feeling this as well. You were supposed to be opening up a comic shop, in your area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
You can't open your retail slot right now, and this is absolutely affecting you as well. So it's not like we're not feeling this as well, and it's specifically you being a retailer.
Well, yeah, I mean, all of us. Look, I think if I had my way, and this will anger a different half of your fans, I'd rather see all these places open. I'd rather see all these publishers going strong. I'd rather see all these creators, no matter what the politics are, getting work and doing comics. I think more comics is better. More a healthy industry is good. As a fan, I want to be able to go in and pick and choose what I like to read and have a good assortment to it. I don't want a virus or an economic situation to take those choices away from me. Maybe that's selfish, but I the more choices, the better, happier I am as a fan, the better and happier I am as a retailer. So all of this stuff, I think on this channel and on yours and on mine, we're trying to put out facts of here's what's going on. Sometimes those are emotionless, but they're facts, and this is what we have to look out for. And hopefully, in looking out for them, we can address them and figure out ways to keep going or to beat back these problems. This is a tough one. There's just way too much uncertainty right now in the industry, and unfortunately, that can't be solved by everybody kind of spreading a hashtag on Twitter saying "Yay for comics." It's going to require retailers right now need to know who's coming into the store. So I guess some advice: if you're a fan and you like your comic shop and you want to see it survive and you want to do the right thing for the industry because you enjoy it, then make sure that you're talking to your comic shop. But even if they're not open, send them an email, call them on the phone, let them know what you're going to be buying. If you are going to be pulling back, lots of people are. Just let them know. Give them some insight into what you're thinking. That's what a lot of comic stores, you go to Facebook groups, you go to some of the retailer groups. That's what all of us are lacking right now. As I'm trying to open up a store, I don't know what my audience is going to be, and nobody really knows. We're hearing very little, and that scares us. So that's where we have to get on top of it.
Well, I'm glad you talked about, some of the Facebook groups and other things that you're involved in, kind of behind the scenes. I know you have some conversations with publishers. You have some conversation with pros. It sounds like there's a general uneasiness. Is that the temperature of the room across the entire industry, or some parts of it, more optimistic than others?
Yeah, I think that there's a general uneasiness. I think it depends on kind of who you're talking to. There's certainly some creators who have work. They know kind of what their next 6 months are going to look like. And I think anyone who knows kind of what the near future holds is feeling better. If they have been able to reopen and they've seen that a lot of their customers have come back and they're kind of adapting, as soon as you have certainty, you're feeling better. But most people don't. And I think there is a lot of concern. I think it's why some of these scandals and other things have come up, it's people are edgy and they're worried, and when you're scared, you in some places you lash out, and so you're seeing a lot of that happen. You're seeing a lot of very anxious behavior, and all people want to do is get back to as close to normal as possible, and that's going to be tough. It's a long way in coming.
Yeah, it's a weird place to be in, you and I right now, because normally a lot of these rumors start coming up, and we'll come on here and very matter-of-factly be like, okay, this sounds about right. That sounds like bullshit. This is somewhere in the gray. Mm-hmm. But in this one, it's we can't come on here and provide really any level of fidelity, just kind of looking at the information available. But that's normally how we do it. People be like, well, we're not really shooting at the hip when we bring this information there. We actually go and we do a little bit of research. Then we talk about, this rumor or that rumor. With this rumor, there's really no information. It's a weird place to be, and I wish I could reassure the audience, because I know we do have, obviously comic book readers. There are retailers that come here for information. I know there are pros that watch the channel as well, and I have no reassurances to give one way or the other. Where yeah, this sounds about right, or this sounds wrong. Normally, yeah. I do not deal with this much of a black area to where the information isn't available for me to go and parse through and get a general idea of what it means, because it's not there to look at.
No, it's not. So I think the only solution to this is we have to be able to start to forecast and predict what the future will hold, and it also means there's got to be some efforts tried. Not all are going to work. Whether it's new crowdfunding models, where it's different rights for your books, whether it's different pull box systems going online with your store. There's a number of different initiatives, and they're not all going to work, but hopefully many do. And when they do, or when these attempts are being done, whether you're a creator, a publisher, a fan, a retailer, whatever you happen to be, show your homework. Talk about what you're doing and what worked and what doesn't work. One thing about this industry is it will be stronger if more people are stronger within it. This is not a good industry for individuals. It's always there's an ecosystem that kind of depends on each other, and it's why, even though it was very painful, I know for a number of retailers, it was very controversial. Diamond, the new distributors coming in to change that monopoly was a positive thing, because it took away 1 point of failure. And that's my opinion. But right now, when you're dealing with so much uncertainty, single points of failure are very, very dangerous, no matter what the industry is. And I think the more that we can get away from that, the better. So all we can do is kind of come on, assess, analyze, and kind of talk about what's working, and hopefully we get somewhere together. But the comic industry will survive. It absolutely will. Some of these loans are large. It will keep going, but there's a lot of uncertainty right now, and that's always tricky.
Obviously, the viewers didn't know this. You and I, sometimes we do a pregame, sometimes we don't. We didn't do one on this conversation. I was hoping maybe you knew something that I didn't know, but I guess we're all in the dark here.
Yeah, I mean, all I know is that the money's running out. So hopefully that there's there's another loan, or we can start to kind of get a handle on it, or we can get to more, a policy that works. But retail was hurting. The virus amped that up, and it's a lot of uncertainty. I think the thing that I worry about a little bit is the amount of money that went out to the publishers. I mean, like almost every publisher took a loan. That's pretty substantial too.
Yeah, a lot of big places. We saw sports franchises. We saw, chain restaurants, and everybody was kind of taking those loans. Some of them gave it back, but it was surprising and eye-opening to see exactly who ended up needing that PPP money. Because I think initially it was kind of earmarked, or the idea was small business, but it turned out all business really needed it.
It did, and I think I don't know, maybe it's a conversation for another time, but I look at the loans that went out to the publishers and places like the San Diego Comic Convention and others with so many of these companies rely so heavily on contractors and ICs. The purpose of these loans was, job protection, was to keep people employed and afloat, keep some of these businesses employed. And most of these companies went ahead and canceled contracts, stopped work, let their ICs go, but still took pretty hefty loans. And I mean, that was not the intent of that money. So, hopefully these companies have done the right thing and have, really kind of leaned into stabilizing their business and making it quicker for people to come back to work and maybe even expand projects. But, when you see a dark horse taking a loan of $2 to $5 million, and meanwhile they canceled a number of projects. You've got to wonder what happened there.
Absolutely. Well, this is definitely something we'll have to keep our eye on. Hopefully, and maybe we'll come back and revisit this and maybe look at the ethical nature of the way people are using these loans, or what our thoughts on. We definitely need to look into it more.
Absolutely.